Detachment of the Royal Irish Fusiliers, Royal Artillery, with 4 Maxim guns. Egyptian, 2 Maxim guns to each of the 5 Egyptian batteries, for a total of 10 Maxim guns. Engineers, a detachment of the Royal Engineers. The flotilla commanded by Commander Keppel. 1898 class armored screw gunboats 3, the Sultan, the Melik, the Sheikh, each carrying 2 Nordenfeldt guns, 1 quick-firing 12-pounder gun, 1 howitzer, and 4 Maxims. 1896 class armored screw gunboats 3, the Fateh, the Nasser, the Zafir, each carrying 1 quick-firing 12-pounder gun, 2 6-pounder guns, and 4 Maxims. Old class armored stern-wheel gunboats 4, the Tamai, the Hafir, the Abu Klea, the Matema, each carrying 1 12-pounder gun and 2 Maxim Nordenfeldt guns. Footnote: the steamer El Teb, wrecked at the Fourth Cataract in 1897, had been refloated, and to change the luck was renamed Hafir. Steam transport, 5 steamers, the Dal, the Akasha, the Tara, the Akhma, the Khaibar. The total strength of the expeditionary force amounted to 8,200 British and 17,600 Egyptian soldiers, with 44 guns and 20 Maxims on land, with 36 guns and 24 Maxims on the river, and with 2,469 horses, 896 mules, 3,524 camels, and 229 donkeys, besides followers and private animals. While the army were to move along the west bank of the river, the Omdurman side, a force of Arab irregulars, formed from the friendly tribes, would march along the east bank and clear it of any Dervishes. All the debris which the Egyptian advance had broken off the Dervish Empire was thus to be hurled against that falling state. Eager for plunder, anxious to be on the winning side, sheikhs and emirs from every tribe in the military Sudan had hurried, with what following the years of war had left them, to Wad Hamed. On the 26th of August the force of irregulars numbered about 2,500 men, principally Jaalin survivors, but also comprising bands and individuals of Bisharin, of Hadendoa from Suakin, of Shukriya, the camel breeders, of Batahin, who had suffered a bloody diminution at the Khalifa's hands, of Shagia, Gordon's vexatious allies, and lastly some Jelalab Arabs under a reputed son of Zubeir Pasha. The command of the whole motley force was given to Major Stuart Wortley, Lieutenant Wood accompanying him as staff officer, and the position of these officers among the cowed and untrustworthy Arabs was one of considerable peril. While the infantry divisions were marching round the heights of Shabluka to the camp opposite Royan Island, the steamers and gunboats ascended the stream and passed through the gorge, dragging up with them the whole fleet of barges and gyassas. The northern end of the narrow passage had been guarded by the 5 Dervish forts, which now stood deserted and dismantled. They were well built, and formed nearly a straight line, 4 on one bank and 1 on the other. Each fort had 3 embrasures, and might, when occupied, have been a formidable defence to the cataract. Threshing up against the current, the gunboats and stern-wheelers one after another entered the gorge. The Nile, which below is nearly a mile across, narrows to a bare 200 yards. The pace of the stream becomes more swift. Great swirls and eddies disturb its surface. High on either side rise black, broken, and precipitous cliffs, looking like piles of gigantic stones. Through and among them the flood river pours with a loud roaring, breaking into foam and rapids wherever the submerged rocks are near the surface. Between the barren heights and the water is a strip of green bushes and grass. The bright verdant colour seems the more brilliant by contrast with the muddy water and the sombre rocks. It is a forbidding passage. A few hundred riflemen scattered Afridi-wise among the tops of the hills, a few field guns in the mud forts by the bank, and the door would be shut. The mounted forces marched from Wad Hamed at dawn on the 27th, and, striking out into the desert, skirted the rocky hills. Besides the 21st Lancers and 9 squadrons of Egyptian cavalry, the column included the Camel Corps, 800 strong, and a battery of horse artillery, and it was a fine sight to see all these horsemen and camelmen trotting swiftly across the sand by squadrons and companies, with a great cloud of dust rising from each and drifting away to the northward. The zeriba of the camp at Royan had been already made, and much of the ground cleared by the energy of the Sudanese division, which had been the first to arrive. An advanced depot was established at Royan Island, which was covered with white hospital tents, near which there was a forest of masts and sails. The barges and boats containing the stores and kits awaited the troops, and they had only to bivouac along the river bank and shelter themselves as quickly as possible from the fierce heat of the sun. The dark hills of Shabluka, among and beneath which the camp and army nestled, lay behind us now. To the south the country appeared a level plain covered with bush and only broken by occasional peaks of rock. The eternal Nile flowed swiftly by the tents and shelters, and disappeared mysteriously in the gloom of the gorge, and on the further bank there rose a great mountain, Jebel Royan, from the top of which it was said that men might see Khartoum. The whole army broke camp at Royan on the 28th of August at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and marched to Wadi el Abid, 6 miles further south. We now moved on a broad front, which could immediately be converted into a fighting formation. This was the first time that it had been possible to see the whole force, infantry, cavalry, and guns, on the march at once. In the clear air the amazing detail of the picture was striking. There were 6 brigades of infantry, composed of 24 battalions. Yet every battalion showed that it was made up of tiny figures, all perfectly defined on the plain. A Sudanese brigade had been sent on to hold the ground with pickets until the troops had constructed a zeriba. But a single Dervish horseman managed to evade these, and just as the light faded, rode up to the Warwickshire regiment and flung his broad-bladed spear in token of defiance. So great was the astonishment which this unexpected apparition created, that the bold man actually made good his escape uninjured. On the 29th, the forces remained halted opposite Teref, and only the Egyptian cavalry went out to reconnoitre. They searched the country for 8 or 9 miles, and Colonel Broadwood returned in the afternoon, having found a convenient camping ground, but nothing else. During the day the news of 2 river disasters arrived, the first to ourselves, the second to our foes. On the 28th the gunboat Zafir was steaming from the Atbara to Wad Hamed, intending thereafter to ascend the Shabluka cataract. Suddenly, overtaken now as on the eve of the advance on Dongola by misfortune, she sprang a leak, and in spite of every effort to run her ashore, foundered by the head in deep water near Metemmeh. The officers on board, among whom was Keppel, the commander of the whole flotilla, had scarcely time to leap from the wreck, and with difficulty made their way to the shore, where they were afterwards found very cold and hungry. The Sirdar received the news at Royan. His calculations were disturbed by the loss of a powerful vessel, but he had allowed for accidents, and in consequence accepted the misfortune very phlegmatically. The days of struggling warfare were over, and the general knew that he had a safe margin of strength. The other catastrophe afflicted the Khalifa, and its tale was brought to the advancing army by the intelligent spies, who to the last, even when the forces were closing, tried to pass between them. Not content with building batteries along the banks, Abdullah, fearing the gunboats, had resolved to mine the river. An old officer of the old Egyptian army, long a prisoner in Omdurman, was brought from his chains and ordered to construct mines. 2 iron boilers were filled with gunpowder, and it was arranged that these should be sunk in the Nile at convenient spots. Buried in the powder of each was a loaded pistol with a string attached to the trigger. On pulling the string the pistol, and consequently the mine, would be exploded. So the Khalifa argued, nor was he wrong. It was resolved to lay one mine